Good afternoon to all. And then we are now in this section discussing about education, training, and prison. Then we are Giovanni and I, Sergio Grossi and Giovanni Torrente.
Hi.
We are waiting to the order, but then we start. We start first with the presentation of Giovanni Torrente, that he will be discussing about the role of prison education in the educator in the criminalization process, result from an ethnographic research. Then you can go.
Thank you, Sergio. Now, the first difficulties of my presentation is to share with you a few slides about my presentation. Sergio, does it works? The slide, okay, I think it works, no? You can see the slide, Sergio? I hope that you are hear me. In my speech, I will present, I will show you the results of our research made in what in Italy we call the educational area of a North Italian prison. First question, what are educational area? Educational area in the Italian prison system is a group composed by educators, social workers, psychologists, prison officer, and director. This group has the task to provide to that what in Italy is called prison treatment. What is the prison treatment? In the Italian penitentiary legislation, prison treatment is a complex series of measures. Example, you can see labor, professional training, school, religion, etc. That should help the prisoners' social reintegration. Which is the formal scheme, the formal idea, is that after a period of imprisonment, prisoner could leave prison, benefit from what we call alternative measures. What are alternative measures? Are, for example, home detention, community service, work outside prison, etc., etc. Why is so important the role of educational area, and I can see in particular of prison educator, because educational area has to express their opinion about the opportunity that a prisoner benefit of an alternative measure. In other words, they have to say if these prisoners, or specific prisoners, is able, by their point of view, to go outside prison, to go free on parole, or to another kind of alternative measure. In my research, I think that I make two main hypotheses, two main questions. The first one is I try to investigate how the educational areas are able to reduce the pain of punishment. The second one is which is the impact of the educational areas, of the educational area decisions in what we call the criminalization processes. So today, as we have not a lot of time, we will focus on the second question about the criminalization processes. In which sense? To introduce the research, I have to say some words about the methodology. The methodology, this was an ethnographic research. This was an ethnographic research as I worked, as I was a prison educator. I spent part of my working life, working as prison educator in that prison of the north of Italy. So by the methodological point of view, I spent the period when I work as prison educator, I write my ethnographic diary, and I've done a direct observation of the prison practices. The ethnographic diary was wrote in 3 specific period of direct observation. The first one from May 2010 to February 2011, the second from February 2014 to April 2014, and the third one from April 2017 to November 2017. The prison frame where I've worked and where I found the results that I introduce today. Was a prison very overpopulated with a high level of overcrowding. For example, in 2010, the official capacity of the prison was 180 detainees. In 2010, there were 350 detainees. Years later, the overcrowding was less high, but there were, since today, an overpopulation of this prison. There were a 90 rate of foreign prison population. 70-75% of the prison population was non-Italian prisoner. And I think the most important point that I have to underline is that this was a prison with how can I say, a bad reputation in the Italian prison system. Though it was known as a punitive prison for detainees who had problem of datation. There were few opportunities of work, there were a high level of overcrowding, etc. Of course, in the Italian prison system, we don't know a difference by the formal point of view. In the law, we don't know a difference about good and bad prison. But in the fact, I can say, as in all other total institutions, there are some institutions that are better than the other, and some that are worse. These were a very bad prison, an uncomfortable prison, I think I can say. I think that one of the first, I think most important results of my research is the great difference between the formal tasks of prison educator and in general of educational areas, and what prison educator understand, learn with the socialization with the prison system. For me, and I think also for my colleagues, the socialization with the prison environment was useful to learn some new daily objective, very different from the official task provided by the law. Of course, there were many daily objective, daily goal that we need to perceive, to achieve. But I can say, I think, that there were two main organizational goals that were most important than others. The first one is a very general goal to take no risks. We know that in a prison everything could be dangerous. No, one important rules for educator and also for other people that work in that system was, please do not take risk. You have not to do nothing that is dangerous. The second is to reduce the workload of the operators. Of course, today I will focus on the second goals. operators know a lot of people for whom they have to take decision, to make opinion, etc., etc. And so it was clear that they cannot know everything about all the people that they meet. So what I found in the organizational system where I work was some strategies to reduce their workload. In this slide, you can see three main strategies that I'd like to resume. The first one is to make few talks with detainees, to reduce most possible the talks they interviewed to the detainees, to the prisoners, and to do the interviews just with the detainees who have requested to talk with the educator. And there were also another rules, not to show you too much in the prison system, not to be too much in the section, not to be too much in the view of prisoners, because to be present in the section produce requests by detainees, produce work, produce many things to do. But there is a problem. The problem that prison education has to deliver opinion for all the detainees. And in the fact, what I understood after few days, I can say weeks of work, is that we know few things of people that for that we have to deliver opinion. And so, what are the question that I try to answer is what are the tools used by prison educational area to make decision, to deliver decision for people for whom they do not know many things. And what I think to have understood is that an organizational system like the prison where I work make a large use of categories. An extensive use of categorization in order to give an opinion about the opportunity to allow to an alternative measure to detainees. I repeat, not having a profoundly knowledge of the single cases, prison educators use certain typical characteristics of certain social group in order to explain an opinion of the single cases. This is what we call the categorization processes. Using a main category, they were able to deliver opinion decision for the single cases. Some example of these categories. The most important categories: foreign prisoners without residence permit. In these cases, was almost always adverse opinion for the foreign prisoners. For drug addict prisoners, in most of the cases, the favorable opinions was only in the case that it will be allocated to a care community. But we can find some more examples. Prisoners with a bad behavior. In these cases, in most of these cases, their opinion was adverse the benefit of an alternative measure. So, what it seems in my research is that in one side, these organizational practices were very effective. Were very effective from an organizational point of view, as they allow educators to reduce their workload, and as they permit to fulfill the formal task of prison educator. But of course, we can find many problems if we look at these organizational processes from a perspective, from a critical criminological perspective. I think that I'm finished my time. I found three main problems in these categorization processes. Firstly is that they substitute the knowledge of the single cases with a probabilistic reasoning. A probabilistic reasoning founded on prejudice, in the fact that is founded on prejudice and on common sense. Second point is that in the fact, this categorizational processes produce a reversing of the burden of proof, as that is the detainees categorized that has to demonstrate to have specific characteristics, to be something different from what the categories say that he is. And third one is that also, of course, these categorizational processes disadvantage the most marginal prisoners, prisoners foreign years, prisoners with difficulties of adaptation, prisoners with few resources are almost immediately categorized in non-favorable opinion. And of course, it is produced that prisoners with a more marginal condition has few possibility to leave prison, not because they are strictly more dangerous, but I think mainly in reason of their social position and on the connection between categorization processes and prejudice. Thank you.
Then, okay, thanks, Giovanni. Then we can go to the next. I think that Costanza is here. Then, hi, Costanza. Then
Hi.
Ciao, Costanza.
Good afternoon. Ciao, Giovanni.
I don't know that you were in my same session.
Yes, because there was a little mistake.
Yeah.
Well, we work at the same university, so I think that
yes.
we are surprised on this.
We know each other.
Yeah. But I know Sergio too, so we are all friends.
Yeah, it will be. I'm in Italy actually. Then I will meet all you.
Sergio
Then, yeah. Then we will talk on women's or mother, visibility of the motherhood and the invisibility of the female gender in the Italian penitentiary. Then Costanza, you can go if you have a slide. You can share. You can also share a slide.
Okay, no, I don't have any slides.
Then it's perfect. Then you can.
Thank you. Okay. So my presentation aims to investigate the female detention as it is configured by the Italian penitentiary law. As Carol Smart states, law operates as a technology of gender. The law has a symbolic significance and it contributes to produce gender identities. Looking at the Italian penitentiary law, there is rarely any specific reference to the woman in prison. When the law refers to women, it refers to inmates that are mothers. The female gender, as Sofia Ciuffoletti states, is almost always represented by the penitentiary system as associated with motherhood. From this point of view, Italian penitentiary law resembles Italian criminal law. In fact, criminal law claims to be the same for everyone, so it's normal that it uses gender-neutral terms, even if we know that critical criminology highlights how formal equality in criminal law often hides substantial inequalities. However, in some cases, the rules of criminal law establish special treatments for women. Even in criminal law, the role of women is often associated with motherhood. For example, criminal law has provided for the obligation to postpone the execution of the sentence that must be served by a pregnant woman or by a woman who has given birth for less than a year. There's also the possibility of postponing the sentence if the woman has a child under the age of 3. From the parliamentary work that led to the approval of these measures emerged the political will to encourage breastfeeding of children outside prison in order to prevent children from entering prison together with their mothers. Maria Luisa Boccia has highlighted that as we still come into the world by a woman, the mother has a primacy in reproduction. These measures protect the children, but somehow they protect the specificity of the mother-child relationship. The centrality of motherhood is also very evident in penitentiary law, even after the child's 3 years of age. A 2001 law introduced the possibility for condemned women to be admitted to the care and assistance of children outside the prison up to 10 years of age. This measure has been associated by the law with the possibility that inmates have to work outside the prison. The parliamentary work that led to the approval of this law decided to expand the measure of working outside the prison, providing for a specific measure for inmates that are mothers. This measure consists in the possibility of being allowed to assist children outside the prison under the same conditions under which a prisoner can be admitted to work outside. This provision was granted with the desire to equate childcare to work in order to enhance the activities related to childcare in the rehabilitation process within the prison. Despite good intentions, equating childcare with work outside the prison poses some problems for inmates that are mothers. First of all, as in other provisions of the penitentiary system, this measure is only granted to mothers. It is granted to fathers only on a residual basis when the mother is diseased or unable and there is no way to entrust the children to other than the father. This rule certainly reflects the fact that, as Saraceno states, care work is still mainly done by women in Western societies. At the same time, configuring childcare as an activity to be officially assimilated to working outside seems to consolidate the idea that for women the main activity is childcare. Moreover, the fact of configuring childcare as an element of treatment seems to reinforce the idea that a woman who has committed a crime, in order to be readmitted to society, must become or return to be a good mother. The idea that the woman who has committed a crime should more than anything else be re-educated in the traditional female roles dates back to the first experiences of detention, not of a criminal type, that were experienced in Europe starting from 16th century. According to the prison reformers of the 19th century, the prison has the function to re-educate women rather than punish them. In fact, women in prison are attributed a double guilt: the guilt of having committed a crime, and the guilt of having betrayed the parental role of the good mother. This role is assigned to women, and the women who commit a crime become bad mothers. Research recently conducted in prison by Ronconi and Zuffa have highlighted how, within the women's sections of a prison, inmates and prison workers carry on a certain rhetoric of motherhood. This rhetoric risks causing suffering and frustration in all those who, for various reasons, are unable or unwilling to embrace the role of the mother. This measure, the measure that provides that mothers may be admitted to the care of their children outside of prison, maintains a symbolic significance, but it has never had a great practical application. The same symbolic significance can be found in the context of the rules that provide two forms of home detention for women prisoners. In fact, there are two rules in our penitentiary law that provide for home detention for mothers of children under the age of 10. Mothers can obtain ordinary home detention if they have to serve a sentence of no more than 4 years. In 2001, it was also introduced a special hypothesis of home detention for mothers with a sentence of over 4 years. These measures can also be granted to the imprisoned father, but only when the mother is unable to take care of the children. In the last 20 years, a series of measures have been envisaged to protect the mother-child relationship with the aim of promoting the rights of children, limiting their entry into prison. In 2011, a reform introduced in the Italian penitentiary system the possibility for inmates that are mothers to serve the sentence in special institutions with attenuated custody. These institutions are designed for mothers with children up to 6 years old. They should be built outside prison walls. They should be colorful and free of bars. In Italy, there are 5 of these institutions with various situations inside each one of them. Not letting children into prison is a very important goal, and it must be pursued. Moreover, the rules that protect motherhood often, as Tamarpich states, limit women's subjectivity to very narrow boundaries. As Cacciari states, the mother in Western societies has long been considered the woman who must limit herself to satisfying the needs of others. At the same time, the mother-child relationship has long been considered as a relationship of mutual interdependence. The rules we discussed earlier seem to delineate this kind of relationship between mother and child, configuring maternal care as an activity to be carried out full-time or, in any case, mainly. Moreover, these are rules that still provide for a custodial sentence, even if the sentence can be served in one's own home or in special institutions. The measures that protect motherhood adopted in the Italian penitentiary system raise further considerations. These measures are designed as exceptions to the rule. In fact, as we have said, the penitentiary system rarely brings out the subjectivity of women. From a legal formal point of view, women in prison are treated like men, with the exception of the few rules protecting motherhood. This exceptionality can also be linked to the number of women prisoners, who make up a small percentage, about 4% of the prison population. The very fact that the term special has been associated with a form of home detention provided for mothers in prison reveals the exceptionality and marginality of the measures established to protect women. As Mino states, the provision of special treatments for women tends to take the male norm as the gold standard. Penitentiary law refers to the man in prison. The woman in prison is conceived as an exception, which in most cases should be assimilated to the male model and who in the case of maternity must be subjected to special treatment. In this way, as Speech and Smart affirm, the difference is not conceived as wealth, but as inferiority, marginality. This approach was partly maintained in the last penitentiary law reform, which dates back to 2018. One of the objectives of the reform was to introduce rules to protect the rights and needs of women in prison. This goal was largely overlooked. Few rules have dealt with the issue of female detention in the reform. One of the previous rules that could have changed with the reform is the one that provides that in every prison for women, special services for pregnant women and for women who have just given birth are improved. The National Guarantor of the Rights of Persons Detained or Deprived of Liberty, Mauro Palma, has criticized this provision, precisely stating that it would have been better to provide specialized health services dedicated to all women, not just those who are pregnant or mothers. Once again, motherhood is seen as the only possible subjectivity for women. The issue of motherhood was addressed by the 2018 reform also because the law reiterated that mothers can keep their children with them in prison up to the age of 3. Special nurseries are dedicated to children in prison. The National Guarantor Mauro Palma also criticized this legislative provision as it is not aimed at overcoming the presence of children in the nursery sections of the prison. This is a legislative provision that protects the mother-child relationship in the first years of the child's life, but it provides for this protection by imprisoning the children. At the beginning of 2020, the mothers in prison that had children with them were still 54, but they became 34 at April of 2020. So the 2018 reform also addressed the issue of women in prison. The law has in fact reaffirmed the provision already present in the penitentiary system that the women's sections must be separated from the men's section. The separation of women from men is an issue that dates back to the debate among reformers in the early 19th century. In Italy, there are both women's penitentiary institutions. Currently, there are 4 of these institutions now, and now 44 prison sections for women within men's institutions. Very often, the women's sections host a very low number of women, with the consequence that few reintegration activities are organized for women. The 2018 reform added to the provision of separation the need for women to be included in the women's sections in such a number as not to compromise treatment activities. In this sense, as Susanna Marietti of the Italian ONG Antigone stated, perhaps it could have been proposed to carry out some daily activities in common with men, keeping the separation between men and women only at night. This would favor the development of a positive relationships between people of different genders, avoiding an absolute separation between the male and female gender. the absolute separation, even in the activities, could contribute to consolidating diversified treatments on the basis of gender. The reintegration activities carried out within women's institutes, as highlighted by Giulia Fabini, often do not include higher education due to the small numbers of women prisoners. Even if some good practices are being tested, still too often working, training, and recreational activities offered to women concern activities traditionally considered feminine, just like cleaning, laundry, cooking, tailoring, carrying out decoupage activities. In this regard, the 2018 reform introduced a very general legislative provision which nevertheless entails a step forward in making the female gender visible in the institution beyond motherhood. It was established that through the planning of specific initiatives, equal access for women prisoners to cultural and professional training has to be guaranteed. This is a very general legislative provision, but it implies an attempt to implement the objectives of the 2018 reform. As mentioned above, this reform had precisely foreseen the need to introduce rules to protect the rights and needs of female prisoners. In the parliamentary work in which the aims of the reform were discussed, it was considered that this provision was very general, but it was nevertheless decided to insert it as it was considered a question of civilization. This provision, the provision to protect women's access to education involves a small implementation of the reform objectives. It is also hoped that it will be concretely implemented, and as we know, the rules that are perceived as rules of principle are rarely applied in prison. But for the moment, we can appreciate the symbolic meaning of this rule, which more than 40 years after the Italian penitentiary law came into force, seems to have begun to consider, even if minimally, women beyond motherhood. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Costanza. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Then I will start my presentation, and then we can open if there are some people that want to ask something. Then, okay. Okay. Then I'm Sergio, and then Sergio Grossi. I'm doing my PhD in the University of Padova and in the University Federal Fluminense in Rio de Janeiro. And then I will start to talk about education and imprisonment, a critical analysis of the prison reform in social reintegration center in Brazil. Then I'm start as an educator to work in a prison, and then in this time I will see several problems in the management and in the idea of education with the adolescent. And then I start to think about how can possible a reform that will be transform the system in the prison system in more educative. And I will start to think about this because I've studied about the Basalian process in the manicomial reform in the 16th in Italy, and then I will start to think how can we open the prison for being more in contact with the society, and then for transform the process. And I find a project in Brazil that was for me really interesting, because it was like the project of the Association of Protection and Assistance of Condemned People. There are like people in 20 countries that trying to implement this system, and it claims that recidivism is like less than the official, but we have to discuss about this, because it's not so simple, this comparison that was like used in many research. Then is a model that was like born in the 70s in Brazil, and there are 3,015 prisoners actually that was in this unit. Is a model that is like cheaper respect of the common system in Brazil, that is so strange because the common system in Brazil is really complicated. There are many people inside this prison, and there are no assistance. There are a little poor. There are very poor assistance. Then actually this system have 14 social reintegration centers in 6 different Brazilian states. In the aim of my research, I go to understand if the APAC is a new model of detention or is a sophistication of the traditional one. Then I try to understand which kind of policy of privation and restriction of freedom is applied in the APAC system. And I'm doing a contextualization of this experience in the Brazilian system, and I do one analysis of the practice in 2 models unit. And then I will try to show the difference between the APAC and the things that the traditional literature say about the prisoner model. Then I go. I'm described this model with the Ottoboni Valdesi book that was like the founder and the actual president. And the book is how the model present herself. I'm doing a review of the Brazilian and Italian academic literature on this model, and I analyze the Brazilian legal framework, and in particular with the prison execution law, and the different also with the practice. Analyzing also the report of the fiscalization organ of in Brazil. Then I'm doing one analysis of the staying inside Itaúna and São João del Rei for first for 1 month, and then for 1 week staying inside this model prison and try to doing ethnography with participant observation and open and semi-structural interview. And then I'm compared with the literature. The model that is like present herself with this kind of graphic is important. The things that are important is participation of community, and recuperando ajuda recuperando, that is like the prisoner helping the other prisoner inside this model for a start at this methodology. Then there are also work and formal education that is really poor inside the Brazilian prison. And then they furnish additional assistance, juridical assistance, and health assistance, because it's really hard to do educational activity without this kind of assistance. And then there are like the point 10, that is like center of reintegrations, that is like a different prison that is not governed by one non-government organization, and it's without police or armed people that stay to control this unity. Then we can go to see that the photo of the environment. I was staying, sleeping in these structures. Then this structure was constructed by the prisoner, And this is like the space where the prisoner can sell her things that they create inside the unity, and the people of the community near can go and buy these things. This is like the room where the prisoner can meet her family and also have an intimate meeting. This is like the work of the education. And then there are different activity. This is like the activity where ex-prisoner go and explain the model of the new of this model of the new prisoner, and also at the society. There are many different prisoner ex-prisoner that actually work in the coordination, in the management of the APAC system, and also in the international representation of the system. You can see there are different work also with things that maybe will be considered really dangerous inside a context with high conflict and potential violence. They produce and cook the things that also using inside the unity. And then the work that is inside this unity is also spread in the city, because they make bread for different public structures. And then this is like security, was like in this is she's a volunteer that that do like the pair course with the prisoner in the tribunal. And then we can see that is really also she do also this kind of activity with people that are considered high dangerous, like people that have killed many people. And then this was like the social educator that was like the only people that stayed with me in the night when I was started the first field research. Then in this discussion, I see that different things and with that can sign a difference, that is like there are absence of internal and external armed prison guards. The armed the weapon are not allowed inside. There are a rupture on the region division between guard and inmates, also because the inmates have the co-responsibility on discipline inside this unity. This kind of system thinks that no one is irrecoverable. There are people that are sentenced to more than 30 years inside this prison, and also there are people that was like very problematic with the discipline inside the traditional prison system that are inside. There are an absence of report of physically of violence and torture. And they say that this is because it's necessary to construct trustworthy relationship, and a maximum of 200 people are allowed inside this unity because for this unity work. Then other things that is important that is the society also is a point of intervention. There are in an interview, the president said to me that it's really hard to educate the legal power, that that is not trust in the possibility of the insertion of prisoner in the society. Is interesting also that this kind of center is not far away, but is in the center of the city, and it is permit to voluntary, family, and school, and other people that want to connect with prisoners inside to connect. And there are like a gradual increase of freedom that with the 3 regime provided by the Brazilian penal execution law. They use like pedagogy of presence. There was a theory of Costa. There was like a Brazilian pedagogist inspired by Paulo Freire. The idea is that for the society, we have to try to insert the people for demonstrating to the society that insertion is possible, and at the same time to the community of prisoners that also don't trust in this, that is possible other things of insertion. There are many people visiting this structure. When I was in the field, I see school, judges, politician, and technician and citizen to go in this unity and start to think about this activity. How can this work? And there are different activity planning all the day. That is really different respect of the Brazilian prisoner system. This is very rare. In one unit that I studied was like 14 inmates studying at the university, and there are different activity also on non-formal education. This space are like not crowded. There are 4 people for each room, and there are research that say that people inside this structure believe in the possibility of reintegration. Also, we can see there are different forms of acculturation of honor code in the prison, because inside this kind of unity, the rapist and the pedophile live together with other inmates and are not separated in like in the normal system in Brazil that they call seguro. And different research and also one of my interview signal that the people thinks that the APAC is like an opportunity because they don't have founded a regular work before the APAC system. But there are like different prison similarity also. There are characteristics of total institution. There are a submission of all the subjects that are inside the prescription, rules, and routines, with continuous surveillance that all the people, also the prisoner, have to do. Stigma that in some APAC is reduced, is present in some other APAC, and there are a problem in the access to the labor market, as say Coutinho, but in particular when I was doing the field research was really hard because the unemployment was huge in Brazil. Then a problem that we have to intercept, that this kind of alternative, as all like also other alternative, depend on the existence of the prison. That the people that don't respect the rule on the discipline will be back in the prison. some of this unity is obligatory to do spiritual activity, but not in all, and there are also a process of modification about this rule. Spirituality is they distinguish spirituality on religion, because spirituality is like more inclusive. Selective about recidivism is really hard to understand how this project impact effectively on the recidivism, because there are like a selectivity problem. Not because in some unity maybe there are people that can be selected by the judiciary system because they work well, they are disciplined inside the prison, but also because for staying inside this unity, the people have to work, have to study, have also to participate at the security routine. That is a signal that maybe these people want to stop with the infraction. In this prison also we can say that the low cost of this unity is also due because there are work of prisoners doing security activity and other activity that sometimes is not paid or is poorly paid. And then, in the conclusion, we can say that there are possibility of return to society different of the institution. Of sure, there are many different prisons. There are not exist only one model of prison. For doing this is really essential to pay attention to internal and external relation in the environment, to build projects that try to break the chain of criminalization. The same time, the education of the APAC is also on the community, and this can reduce the stigma and the reception of the people. This can be part of a constellation of alternative institutions and also considered a concrete utopia, in particular in the Brazilian system. But we cannot forget the systematic problem of imprisonment. In particular, in Brazil, there are a huge problem of the mass imprisonment and the penal selectivity. And we can encounter many Afro-descendant people and poor people inside the prison. And there is a need to study other experiments that are proposed as an alternative to try to understand how can rethink and reduce the damage if of the privation of liberty for understand how can we manage with this conflict in the society. Then thanks at all for the listening. Then we can open for comment. Okay, for question. Then I don't say if Giovanni is here. Then okay.
Yes,
Okay. Okay. I don't know if there are questions. Then there are no internet question. Okay. Then, if there are no external questions, maybe I can do a question.
Together.
Yeah, I can do. I want to ask to Giovanni, what do you think about the impact of the figure of the educator? How the education failed? Why there are like a huge number, and there are like a huge number of people each educator, and also because they are overcrowding, and there are many structural difficulty that was in the implementation of the politics.
Do you have a question also to Costanza, or I answer?
No, I have this then. If you want to do question also.
No, I try to answer to your question. I don't know if we can say that there is a real failure of education in prison. So I think that prison without educator, psychologist, social worker is worst. Is a worst place. No. What I wanted to say is another thing. Is that educators, social worker, educational areas, all the not police officer that is working now in Italian prison system, but in general in all the European prison system, has not been able to change the structural frame of the prison system. Educator has not been able in the Italian system to change prison system. The prison system has been able to change educator's role. No, the organizational practices that I described today, I describe it briefly, but are in the end terrible, as they kill all the opportunities for more marginal people to a resocialization process, no, in the better sense of this expression, no, and I think that these organizational practices are possible also because the frame of the prison frame, the prison environment is able to change the approach of educators, social workers, all the educational area that works in prison. They need these practices, need cynicism, need bad attitudes for people. No, I don't think that it could be possible in an environment different than the total institutional environment like prison or like other mental care institutions, etc. I think that these practices are typical practices of the total institution. I think this is the problem. I don't know if I answered to your question.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm sorry. Can I make a question to Giovanni on this topic?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, there are also a question for you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I would like to ask you, Giovanni, so do you think that if the number of educators, operators would be implemented in prison, there wouldn't be any change?
No, because the failure of the Italian reform of the penitentiary system like in other European countries, like in Portugal. In Portugal, it's happened something like this, like in Spain, like in French, like in other countries. Is not only due to the poor implementation of the reform. Is due because the prison system, like other total institution environments, are not is not possible to change in their structural frame. It's not possible to modify, to structural modify the prison system. We can try to protect human rights. We can try to help people in prison, but we cannot be able to make a structural change of the prison system. The only way to change prison is to delete prison.
Okay.
I have a question also to Sergio.
Go.
No, because it's I spend a lot of time thinking about APAC. I saw in this year's many presentation about the APAC system. So, do you think that APAC could be a real alternative to prison? In our society, do you think that APAC could be an alternative, or what you say in probably your last slide is a part of a constellation? I don't know if you use this word, a part of a number of, but a constellation of institution is not something alternative to. It's something more. I don't know if I explain. And have you think about this in your job? Is it something that has the goal to reduce the prison role in society, or is it something that can operate in a net widening system, in a net widening with a net widening effect? I don't know.
Yeah. Then offshore, I reflected many. I write about abolitionism and APAC also, because then I start to study APAC because I studied the process of Basalian. I say that in the history of the abolition of other total institutions like the mental hospital. There was like a constructing of movement of society of the preparation of the society to doing this, and then there are many different trying and error of Basaglia for doing this kind of proposal than to abolish the manicomio. But then for this, I think that APAC is like open of the prison to the society. I see that they build a movement. Actually, they are doing like a big movement in all the Brazil for 2 months, working. Start reflecting about the problem of the prison, and then the open and the conflict that the APAC generate inside the society. I think that is really good for rehumanize the people that was dehumanized by the prisonal system. Then if you go and say and look at the people inside the prison in the Brazil, you will see the people like a dangerous animal, Then the APAC start to contact the people in the society, and in this I think that is really similar to how the Barata says. when in the article of the 19 say about rethinking social reintegration with the education on the social movement. Then I think that it is important to open, but is not the only alternative in the APAC system. They will be inside this system the people that was to reintegrate in this form in the society. Then I think that there are many other systems to think, but also there was a big problem with then also they have to interact more with the movement that claim for a reduction of the use of prison in Brazil. That we know that the majority of people are inside for drugs policy and other things that this is not good to stay in the prison. But also there are things that was like how do I think that there are different questions that we have to think about. It was like how do manage violent crimes like against women or against like because I interview with a serial stuprator that was in the APAC. This is like a problem. I think that we have to research about how to manage this kind of conflict. But the majority of conflict is not only in education on the people, but in the education of the society in general.
Of course. Can I make to you another last question? Because I think what I perceived, what I learned probably, is that APAC has a great correctional approach. No? But if we follow the lesson from Alessandro Baratta, Massimo Pavarini, etc., it's difficult to find a connection between correctional movement and abolitionist movement. No? In the prison system, of course. I know that in the case of psychiatric healthcare, the history is different. What do you think about this? Because I'm not just...
yeah. They have like a correctional approach, but they work together with the society also. And I think that if we have not movement, if we have not connection with the society, it's really hard to play an abolition of prison. And then I think that in this social situation in Brazil, where the president again saying that they have to kill every people that do crime, I think that the APAC are really warriors in this context. And then the president have many denounce a problem with law as Basaglia, because if you try to open the people that was like inside this all security system, you are responsible of this. And then there are many experimental things that are happen in this. But yeah, I think that it's a really hard conflict with this ideology. But I think that the contradiction that this will build as when the different encounter of the abolitionist movement and the APAC system that are already existing, there are many militant of the abolitionist militant that was working in the APAC, and there are people that was working in APAC that was militant in the abolitionist movement. And I think that this is the question, and the APAC will be like a detonator of contradiction about prison. Because if you know the people that are inside, you will if you hear at the history, maybe you will your punitive approach will be decreased. And also in fact they doing like more respect about human rights, I'm sure. But it's really hard contradiction. It's not
Yes.
easy.
I can see there is a question. Giovanni, you mean be abolitionist? Yes, I mean be abolitionist. There is a Yuri Federico Dutra that asked me. Yes, I mean this.
There are also work on you say to Costanza, say if you have any suggestion for the female problem.
Okay, so about female problem in general in prison, in the present context, I think.
Work only in the space to care.
Okay, so that women have to, in the end, they have to work in care work. Okay, so I think that the problem of the penitentiary law is this: that it configures penalty for women has a space where they need to become became again good mothers. So I think that also alternative penalties like home detention for women, but also the possibility to take care of their children outside the prison is always in this sense. So it contributes to re-educate the women in this sense. I think that the problem, I also think that the problem is detention, not just in the prison context, but also at home. So I think that it would be better to improve some alternatives to prison detention, but not detentive alternatives. So I think that it's better to improve, I guess, parole or measures like that, because they don't limit women inside their homes and to do only care work or to take care of their children. I don't know if this was the question, but if it was related to the care work, I think.
Of course.
Then. Okay. There are no other. If there are other questions. I think that there are no other questions. Then.
Tá bom.
Tá bom.
Tá bom.
Then see you in the next time. Acabou.
Acabou. Boa tarde a todo mundo.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
Thank you very much.
Boa tarde. Código português.
Then, okay. See you.